There's a moment in Dunkirk where a character is feeling this acute level of guilt, shame, and fear, and he's so walled in by those emotions that he's unable to perceive something very important and beautiful about this elderly man that he passes by. He's so conditioned to respond a certain way to a certain set of circumstances that he misses what's actually happening right in front of him. And that's certainly how I could have responded to this film. Simply put, I, Chris Hartwell, love characters. I love their intricate motivations, I love their deep desires and overwhelming fears, and I love being able to, through them, better understand individuals whom I am not. And some of my very favorite films of all time have presented characters just like that. That, however, was not what Dunkirk's aim was, nor of its writer-director, Mr. Christopher Nolan, someone whom I have gained a whole new level of love and respect for after this film. With this film, he didn't want us to know these characters. He wanted us to be these characters. He didn't just want us to see those events next to the individuals that experienced them. He wanted us to live them through them. And every intimate close-up, every epic wide shot, and every film cut was designed to do just that. The characters were these blank slates onto which we were meant to project our own emotions, these empty vessels into which we were meant to pour our own souls with our unique thoughts, hopes, fears, and desires. Even while many have made light of Nolan's continuing trend to cover Tom Hardy's face in every single one of his films, even that felt intentional and a part of the director's desire for us to be those characters. We can imagine our faces beneath that mask. And I will warn you right now, Dunkirk, like so many Nolan films, will not allow you to be a passive viewer. It demands that you pay attention, connecting the dots and filling in those blanks. And the way I see it, that's Nolan's way of getting us to invest all the more in his stories and his characters' points of view. And one of the particularly unique ways that he accomplished that was through his classic Nolan nonlinear storytelling. The story was told in 3 different time periods from 3 different perspectives. 1 week with the soldiers on the beaches, 1 day with the civilians at sea, and 1 hour with the pilots in the skies. And even more than just keeping us guessing and forcing us to pay close attention, that storytelling device really did take us all the more into the characters' perspective. We, along with them, were unable to perceive the whole picture, understanding clearly how things would connect and what would ultimately be each person's fate. That's not to say, though, that Nolan didn't offer any assistance. He very often placed a number of very key visual markers that allowed us to understand and better perceive whether we were flying away from Dunkirk or towards Dunkirk, or that we were on this boat in this particular time period. And with that groundwork laid, Nolan went on to quite simply and purely force us to be those characters, enduring one intense situation after another. Situations with some of the most overpowering sound design that I have ever heard. And like the characters in this film, the violence in those intense situations was often implied as well, the gory details left to our imaginations. But again though, like those characters, I personally found that actually added to the film. What was shown to us by Nolan, both in the violence and the characters, was so nuanced and detailed that we had no problem filling in and imagining what was unseen. The enemy forces, for example, were never once shown in this film, but the level of detail given to the Allied forces, their ships, their weaponry, their uniforms, all of that immaculate detail made that unseen enemy just as real in our minds. And I simply cannot conclude this review without talking about Nolan's fantastic visuals. Even while this film was stuffed with huge images and deafening audio time and again, he also very beautifully used negative space, silence, and slowness to create this very unique sense of unease and this inevitable feeling that the situation would collapse. He informed us earlier on that these were the different things that could go wrong, and from there forced us to just wait in fear until they finally did. And something else, which I should say is coming from a person who loves massive CGI fests like Speed Racer or the amazing work in War for the Planet of the Apes. But Nolan's commitment to doing things for real always amazes me. There is nothing quite like watching a full-size ship capsize and sink. On the downside, his refusal to doctor barely anything in post-production means that there are some rather egregious continuity issues that could have been pretty easily fixed digitally, and the remaining in the film does detract slightly from the flow and coherence of the story. But in the end, this film brought me to tears, and not necessarily because the characters were in tears by the end, but because of the way that Chris Nolan wrote and directed their performances. He really did allow me to feel like I had come through this harrowing experience, and through it felt terror, despair, guilt, shame, grace, and hope. And because he had chosen to tell the story from these 3 unique points of view, 1 week, one day, and 1 hour. He made this beautiful statement that even while we humans remain separated by time and space and see the world from our own unique perspectives, ultimately, we still are connected. And for all these reasons, I will give this film a 4.5 out of 5, and definitely a heart. I really do hate overhyping films, guys, but this film just worked so well for me, Chris Hartwell, and I really hope it works for you as well. Just go in, open mind, and allow this film to be what it is versus what you want it to be, and I think you might enjoy. Definitely comment below, though, and let me know what you thought of the film. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.